senior class, you know, it's an unusual class. I've been through a lot, and Ryan was saying how they always had someone else to look up to and to defer to, and all of a sudden they got here and they looked around, and it's like, oh, you know, who's leading us? We have to become leaders, and it took a while for that to happen with this group.
Well, I think that explains it very well, that college basketball, especially at the high major level, has changed quite a bit. A lot of times, high-profile recruits come in and get an awful lot of attention. They're here a short while and then they leave, and then you have to replenish your talent pool. And rarely do you find a group like we have this year that come in as freshmen, end up being in support roles and kind of stay in those roles throughout their 3 years, and then all of a sudden is thrust into the starting lineup and into major roles in their senior year. And we anticipated this coming into this season. We knew that we were going to struggle at the offensive end because we did not have any double-figure scorers returning. And most players feel like, you know, I can average double figures. It's not that hard until they have to do it, because you don't have to do it one night. You have to do it each and every night to be a consistently high performer. And I think what we found early in the season, that was a real challenge, and we struggled offensively. At the same time, we graduated so many good players at the defensive end of the floor, and those guys were able to cover up for mistakes of guys who were trying hard defensively, but quite frankly, probably weren't in the starting lineup because they weren't quite good enough at either end of the floor. Mm-hmm. And now, not only are they having to raise their game offensively, but they have to dramatically improve their game defensively. And that doesn't happen in a week or even a month. You have to play a number of games before the coach knows what you're capable of doing under game conditions. And in addition, we had guys who were injured, guys like Darius Adams, who were coming off of a 2-year injury bug, and it was going to take him a while to get rid of the rust from the 2 years he had sat out. So we had a lot of obstacles, but this team has shown to be very resilient. It's worked hard every day in practice to try to improve at both ends of the court. And our seniors have stepped up, especially in the closing weeks of the season. They seem to be playing with a great deal more confidence and playing better and better together as a team.
You mentioned resiliency. Overall, I mean, have you ever seen a group that's had to experience as much as these guys did, between the coaching change, the NCAA, the run last season, and this year losing so many of their teammates? I mean, have you in your career ever seen a group have to do something like that?
No, I've had young teams when we had 5 or 6 freshmen who had a lot to learn, but I've never had a senior class like this one that would go from being basically guys who played between 7th and 12th man to now all of a sudden being 1 through 5 or 6. And as I said, that jump is substantial because you're relied upon in every situation. You're the one that has to get the big stop. You're the one that has to make the big free throw. You're the one that has to hit the big 3. You're the one that has to guard the other team's best player. I mean, those are responsibilities you've never had before. Well, maybe you had them when you were in high school, but that's when you were a whole lot better than everybody else. Now, here you're playing against players who the media would describe them as the stars of college basketball, the Jabari Parkers and the Tyler Ennis's and C.J. Fairs and guys like that who get an awful lot of recognition because of what a high level of basketball they play at on a regular basis.
I know, you have 6 seniors this year, you had 6 last year. I don't know what it's like around the rest of the country, but that's by far the most seniors in the ACC back to back. how does that, is that the result of players leaving early, just the way college basketball is today? But how unusual do you see that? You ever run across that?
Well, I think we inherited a very unusual situation. When my staff and I first arrived, there was only one scholarship still available. And eventually that scholarship would go to Shane Larkin. But we also had a sophomore and junior class that was very heavy. And there was a senior that was injured, Julian Gamble, who moved down to the junior class. So we ended up with a substantial number of players in the junior and sophomore class, and not many in the senior freshman class. So when we started our recruitment, Malcolm Grant was graduating, DeQuan Jones was graduating, and that was it. We could only bring in 2 guys. And then the next year, we have a large group of guys in the senior year, Kenny Kaji's class. The junior year, we still don't have a lot of guys to recruit. We had to wait until they graduated to really start what I would consider our first recruiting class. And that class includes now 3 players who have sat out this year: Angel Rodriguez, Sheldon McClellan, DeAndre Burnett, Manu, Davon, and James Kelly. So we had to try to balance it. We didn't want all freshmen, because then we would have been right back in the same boat in a couple of years. So it gets very complicated when your classes are imbalanced or out of balance. And we brought in James. He's going to be our only senior next year. So that means and the NCAA took away a scholarship. That really handcuffs my staff and I as to what we can do in the recruiting arena, because we can't replenish the talent when you don't have a scholarship to do it. So this building process is a lot more complicated than the casual observer would notice. And it's by far the most complicated recruiting situation I've ever been involved with. And in fact, much more complicated because of the NCAA sanctions.
So you
Jim,
can
since
simply
we're not
get
sure.
one-
Okay, talk both at the same time, see if I can answer.
Stereo.
Yeah.
To follow up
Go
on
ahead.
this one, you can sign one more player, you could sign one more this spring, is that right?
Yes, we want scholarship.
Would you like him to be a freshman or a junior college transfer to kind of balance that out?
I'd like it to be a 5th-year senior. We only have one senior. I'd like to get another Donovan Kirk type player, because then at least we'd have 2 scholarships in that class. And then as they graduate, we're only going to be able to bring in 1 freshman. So that's 50% of, if we normally would have 2, 50% of our recruiting class is wiped out. That's not easy to deal with.
That goes on for what, 2 more,
This year, next year, and 1 more after.
Jim, since we're not sure how many more press conferences we'll have in this room this year, would you mind talking
Why do
about
you say that?
Well, ACC tournament next week. You're all traveling, I guess,
And
Tuesday or
then
Wednesday.
March Madness. And
Well, I hope
we go-
something follows next week for
hopefully
sure.
we go all the way to April.
Exactly. Would you mind talking a little bit about the kids you have signed, Newton and USADA, just the skill set they have since they're signed? I guess Amy says you can talk about them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. What we were trying to do is build a team. And once you've got a good team, then you build the program. But it goes in stages. And you first have to lay the foundation. And last year's championship caliber team gave us enough exposure that recruits started to recognize our style of play and what we were trying to implement. And they liked it. They liked all the ball screening that we did. They liked that we got up and down the court with Duke and Carolina, scored 90 points, and thought, hey, this is an exciting way to play. So we were able to go out and market that in the recruiting process. And the first thing we needed to do was get a point guard, because by the time the season was ending, we knew Shane was now leaving, and Angel Rodriguez had expressed his interest. So we got a commitment from Angel Rodriguez and Sheldon McClellan and we knew in all likelihood they both would sit out. We were also looking to become the best ball screen, pick and roll, pick and pop offensive team in the country, because every kid that we speak to wants to play in the NBA. And you have to have a style of play that will prepare him for that. Shane Larkin was a first-round draft choice in part because of our style of play, because he got a chance to showcase his ball skills, his ability to use ball screens to either score or create shots for somebody else. So going into this year, we knew we were going to need size, because Raphael was graduating. We brought in Donovan Kirk. We knew he'd be graduating. Eric Swope would be graduating. So we looked for big guys, and we were looking for guys who we thought could play inside and outside. Omar Sherman is 6'8" or 9", weighs 250 pounds. He has a beautiful, soft, left-handed shooting touch from three-point range, kind of like a Kenny Kaji. He also has a nice low-post left-handed jump hook game. And we felt like as he got bigger and stronger, not bigger in terms of weight, but just stronger, he could be a force offensively, but also a very good serviceable rebounder. We also signed Ivan Ucita, who's about 6'9" or 10, and Ivan is a junior college player, and we felt like we needed a couple more upperclassmen. I didn't want to bring in all freshmen because we had a number of scholarships to give, 5 or 6 really to give. So if we're going to give 6 scholarships, we can't bring in 6 freshmen. That would just make us too young. Ivan is a guy who can hit a spot up 3. He's got very good hands in around the basket. And the thing I was most impressed about him is he's an excellent passer. I would consider him a smart player. He's not a gifted athlete. I mean, he's not a run and jump athlete. No, we would like to have somebody his size with a little bit more physical ability to go along with those same skills. But those guys are very, very hard to get. Those are the McDonald's All-Americans. Those are the junior college All-Americans. Those are the one-and-done type guys. So we felt like, okay, we've got a little bit of size, 6'9" and 6'10". We then also wanted to add some depth and shooting ability on our perimeter because we were going to be graduating Darius Adams and Ryan Brown. And the 2 guards we signed, Jaquan Newton has become the leading scorer in his school's history. And if I'm not mistaken, he just broke the record and became the leading scorer in the Catholic School League in Philadelphia, in the history of the Catholic School League. So he's competed against high-level competition and is a proven scorer. And one of the reasons he liked Miami is because of how often we run the ball screens. James Palmer is someone who's played in, I think, the best high school basketball league in the country. And he plays at St. John's College High School in Washington, D.C. And at 6'5", he's a very, very good shooter, like a Ryan Brown. But he also is an outstanding passer. So I think his skills, now he's very, very young. He's only just turned 17. So when he comes in, he'll look like Manu, baby-faced, and he doesn't shave yet. Looks like he should be just going into his junior year of high school rather than freshman year of college.
Thanks.
So, this year's senior class has been with you the longest, but obviously they were here when you got here. Can you talk about how they kind of eased the transition to a new head coach and helped you, I guess in your own words, build your foundation?
Well, the two guys that I think sacrificed tremendously for the sake of the team and winning was Eric Swope and Raphael Acquavier. Both extremely hard workers, both outstanding students, great young men who played sparingly during those first 2 seasons, yet showed up every day for practice and did a fantastic job of preparing the starters to play as well as they did. Garius, on the other hand, was missing a lot. He didn't get a chance to even practice often. Ryan was a major contributor really throughout his career. And I just think those guys have had the right attitude, the right work ethic, and we're hoping to find more guys like them.
Can you talk about one senior who either performed as well as you expected him to, or maybe surprised you, and then conversely maybe one you're expecting to get a little bit more out of?
I'd ask that again. Let me see if I understand the question correctly.
Can I ask you the first part and then the second?
Yeah.
Okay. So, is there one senior who has played as well as you expected him to, or maybe played better than you expected him to?
Well, I have high expectations for all the players, and we expect them to improve each and every year. I think the one guy that has tailored his game most recently to what we've been looking for throughout his career has been Eric Swope. In the last month, he's been so valuable. He's been attacking the basket, using an assortment of layups to really put pressure on the opponent's defense. He's defended very hard and very well. He's rebounded well for an undersized guy. And quite frankly, I wish I had played him more earlier. Maybe we could have gotten more from him if he had gotten more playing time. But in the last month, he's been a real pleasant surprise.
Why do you think that it took this long? I mean, you weren't here earlier than that, but what do you think it was about him or his game that coaches, you and the previous staff, didn't play him more? Why did it take so long to see what he has?
We had a lot of other good players.
Yeah.
You know, Kenny Kaji, he wasn't going to be okay. If Kenny Kaji was on the team now, he'd be starting at the 4.
Right.
And it's not. When I was at Bowling Green, my son Jay's best friend was a guy named Javier Crespo. And Javier came into my office one day and said to me, "Coach, how am I practicing?" I said, "You're practicing great." He said, when I get into games, how do you think I'm playing? I said, "You're playing great." And he said, "Well, Coach, why don't I play more? I'm playing like 5 minutes a game." And I said, "Well, the kid in front of you, Anthony Stacy, is like the best player in school history." And Anthony Stacy went on to become the leading scorer in school's history, 5th leading rebounder in school's history, and player of the year in the league. So some of it just has to do with who you're competing with.
Yeah.
It's not bad luck. I mean, you want to be on a good team. I think Eric is really happy that we won a championship last year, and he was a big part of it. But the guy who was in front of him was just better than him. And you're trying to win. So even though a guy is good, you don't say, "I like him, so we're just going to play him more." No, you try to win the game. And I like all the guys, but I'm going to play the guys I think can win. Now, this year we started out, Donovan Kirk was playing the best. So we started out Tanya and Donovan. And then Ryan and Garius weren't shooting the ball very well. And the next best shooter was James Kelly. So James got a lot of playing time at that time because he was making some jump shots. He was making some threes. Eric doesn't do that. So we're trying to spread the defense out and make them have to come out so we can go to the basket a little bit more. So James was the choice. So it wasn't that Eric was playing badly. We just felt like we needed more shooting. Once Ryan and Gary started scoring in double figures on a consistent basis in January, you got to go back to November, December. Do we remember what they were shooting? Do you remember me saying, Ryan's always not shot the ball well early. So once Garius and Ryan started to shoot the ball, we got more points from our guards. Manu playing a little bit better. All right, now somebody like Eric plays a more valuable role because now he can get to the rim. Because why? Because the defense is spreading out a little bit more. Why? Because we're making some shots. Oh, and that's why I tell the players all the time, players always want playing time. What I tell them, the whole key is playing well. Because when you play well, you earn more playing time. And if a guy scores 14 one game and gets 2 the next, I'm like, well, which guy is it going to be this third game? Right? Tanya's a perfect example. You weren't at the game the other day, were you?
No.
At home, on the road at NC State?
14 and 13.
14
Yeah,
points, 13
13
rebounds.
rebounds.
He was terrific. And the other day he got 2 and 2. So some of it inexperience, some is just inconsistency. The better players play more consistently well.
The goal, obviously, is to do what you did last year, next weekend, and win the tournament. But if that doesn't happen, would NIT, should you get it, be meaningful for you this year?
We're not in the running for the NIT.
Okay, because?
Because of the criteria for the NIT.
What would omit you, because you could be 500 or above?
Well, it has nothing to do with
Okay.
your record now. It has to do with your RPI. It's selected just like the NCAA tournament.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment all the at-large bids are taken, those 37 teams are chosen, the next group of teams are going to be the ones that make up the NIT field. With one exception. Anybody who wins their regular season championship but does not win their conference tournament championship, they're automatically in.
So your RPI is too low?
Our RPI is not good enough.
No, okay. So any other postseason options? There's another tournament.
No,
Underneath that.
I think those tournaments are for the teams with young guys who are trying to give their younger players more playing time. We've got 6 seniors.
Okay,
We only have 4 scholarship players returning.
sure. So if you
Think
don't...
about that. You know, this year we were an inexperienced team with 5 scholarship seniors.
Mhm.
Next year, we'll only have 4 scholarship players who participated this year: Manu, Davon, James, and Tanya. Those will be the only guys that played on this year's team
Wow,
that are playing next year.
wow. So you can't say with certainty, I guess, that, unless you win the tournament next weekend, there won't be postseason this year. That can pretty much
Oh,
be
I
said
can
with
say
certainty.
with certainty that
Yes.
if we win the tournament, we're in the NCAA tournament. If we don't win the ACC tournament, we're not in the
Your season's
postseason.
over. Right.
As a head coach, what made you prouder, this year's team going up to North Carolina and winning, or last year's team beating them all 3 games?
Oh, well, I would say I'm proud of all those accomplishments, but I'm 3 times prouder of winning beaten 3 times than I am beaten once. Once is good. 3 times in 3 different sites, that's pretty special.
Want to say anything about Wake Forest?
Oh, we play them.
Oh, yeah, Saturday, there's a
They had an
game.
absolutely great win last night. They beat a very fine Duke team. With the way that the teams in the middle to low end of the ACC have been playing recently, Georgia Tech winning at Syracuse, Wake Forest beating Duke, it's pretty impressive what Virginia's been able to do. Wake Forest, on the other hand, is a team that is very, very gifted with young guys. They really only have 2 seniors. They've got a really strong sophomore class. They're a team to be reckoned with for us on Saturday, but also in the future.
I know you talked about him a little bit, but would you mind talking a little more about Garius Adams and his season and how he helped you? Maybe he was hampered by injuries that he hasn't fully recovered from.
Well, of all the guys I've coached over the years, Garius has had to deal with more injuries, serious injuries that curtail your opportunity to play at the level you're used to playing at or want to play at. My first year here, he was in the starting lineup and playing very well. His last game before having surgery was against West Virginia on the road, and he had 20-something points. He then did not play, practice, or do anything for like the next 6 weeks. So right in the middle of the year, from like the 1st of December through the 1st of February, he's out. That is very, very frustrating. And the next year to sit out completely, and then to come into this year and pull a hamstring during the summertime, or maybe it was September, and for me to be told, don't count on him. He's likely not to be able to go more than 2 days in a row of practice. You're not going to be able to play him more than 20 or 25 minutes in a game. And for him to, provided he doesn't get hurt today or tomorrow, he will start on Saturday, and he'll have started in every game this season. That's in itself is a tremendous accomplishment. Then to be asked to play 3 different positions just about every game. He plays the 1, he plays the 2, he plays the 3. And that's challenging when you're a player with all those natural skills. But here's a guy who never really played the point before. Didn't play the 2, not since I've been here. He was always a 3-man. He was playing alongside of Malcolm Grant and Duran Scott. So he was like the 3rd guard. Now he's like the quarterback. And he shares that responsibility with a guy like Manu now. We've moved Davon Reed off the ball because he's wanted him to get more shots. But Garius has done a great job this year. He's had to overcome an awful lot of adversity in his career. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.